So excited to give everyone an update today on where we're currently at and kind of do a review over the last year, which was a challenging year for a lot of resource companies, but I think there's a strong case of why we stand out and how we've been able to outperform our peers. And I think that's an important thing as we move forward into what looks like a bullish gold and silver market, even though the last couple of days is a bit of the contrary. But I think it's just a blip. I think there's no doubt that we're coming into what could be a very long sustained bullish market towards gold and silver. And that's one thing that we really want to discuss today is, when we talk about our projects, we usually focus on the gold component, but it's important to note there's also a strong silver component associated with both of the projects we have in Sonora. And, being in Mexico, it's produced over 25% of all the silver ever produced globally. So that's a significant thing. And, the more work that we do, the more silver we seem to find associated with these systems. So I think that's encouraging. And, with the work that we're doing right now at PILAR and the bulk sample, we are seeing good recovery of the silver, which isn't always the case. So I think it just adds to the overall story that we're developing here and the potential that we have. So I will be talking a lot about the future. We're excited about the future. If you have any questions or want clarity on anything, please feel free to ask me. We'll open it up for discussion after the presentation. So a quick snapshot of our shareholders. Right now we have about 15% institutional ownership. That is growing. It has been growing over the last year and a bit. Between management and close associates, about 25% is held. And then the remainder is retail and high net worth that's out there. I'd say there's a large portion of that is very friendly and long positioned, which is great for our shareholders, but also means that there's bits and pieces out there available from time to time. Currently, we have 39.9 million shares outstanding. For me, that's something we're very proud of. The fact that we've been around for 4 years now and still have under 40 million shares issued, I think is a big testament to what we've been able to accomplish so far. We have approximately 1.8 million of working capital that'll carry us through to June 2024. So we've got a year of working capital currently, and we'll be looking to expand on that as the year goes on. 8.8 million warrants out. Most of those are priced over $1.20, so a lot of lead room between where we're trading today and that price point. So we don't expect a lot of pressure from warrants. And on the option side, most of those, especially the most recent ones, are priced above where we're trading. So those are all held by, again, close consultants, insiders, and very much aligned with our shareholders as we look to continue to grow. Looking at the team, I co-founded the company in 2018 with Derek Wood. And since then kind of progressed from director to VP exploration to CEO as of a year ago, roughly. Been an interesting year, but I think we've accomplished quite a bit over that time. And really my background is exploration and moving projects towards development. I've worked in over 20 countries, a lot of difficult jurisdictions, and that makes Mexico extremely refreshing on how accessible and how open it is to mining and development there. Leading into our team, Rodrigo Caes-Montillo, he's really the key piece for us and everything we do in Mexico. Rodrigo has over 35 years of experience as a geologist. He's from Sonora. He's worked internationally for companies like Rio Tinto, and he's come back to Sonora and developed a geological team around him. And it's really that team that's allowed us to be successful as we continue to expand on that. And really proud of the fact that our entire technical team is from Sonora They know the jurisdiction well. They know the rocks. They know how to operate there. And again, a key piece to us being successful. Greg Ball has been with the company since inception. He was our original CFO, retired last year, but has remained on as a director. Yana replaced Greg as CFO in August of last year. Yana's been an excellent addition for us, extremely hardworking, very focused, and keeping everything on track for us. Luis Manuel Arroyo Dominguez, he's a mine engineer from Mexico. He lives in Durango. He has nearly 50 years of mine exploration development experience in Mexico. So a huge addition for us, very well connected, has gone through the permitting process multiple times, bringing projects forward. So a huge addition for us there. And also a key piece is Ralph Wintermantel. He's German. He's a big connection for us and our shareholders over in Europe. Ralph worked for Deutsche Bank for about 15 years, primarily working as the head editor for a magazine that they had that highlighted the investment space. And he's very well connected, very well respected over there. So a big addition for us. And then again, going to the technical team, we have a very strong team. We've got about 7 geologists that work for us nearly full time. And, you know, Isaac and Dr. Lugo are key pieces in that. We do work closely with the University of Sonora. We've got 2 students doing their undergrad thesis right now on both of the projects, and looking to develop, you know, the future geologists coming up in Sonora. And so a strong team, and you know, I think what we've built here is really going to propel us going forward. So now looking at the year in review, and you know, this is an interesting way to kind of, you know, see how we performed over the last year. And you know, looking at the chart, it doesn't look fantastic, but I think you have to look at, you know, what we've been able to accomplish and how we stack up against our peers. And so if you look over year, May to current time now, gold's performed, it's up about 9%. Now that's going to change a bit today. It looks like it's down again, but it's up 9%, which is fantastic. The GDXJ up 5%. And really, when you look at the GDXJ, this is a group of companies that have big, over 2 million ounce established resources that are moving towards development, or they are developed. So that's interesting to kind of gauge us against. And then if you look at our performance, we're down 13%. But there's 2 things that's important there. One, if you look at our peers, and these are other explorers, small producers in Sonora, most of those are down 30% or more, some 40%. And really, everyone seemed to go through the same drop in share price through the latter part of last year. And most of those companies haven't fully recovered from that yet. And this is where we really stand out. From late November of last year, our share price has rebounded and outperformed all of our peers. And it's because of, I think, 2 key factors. So we're up 35% year to date. And really what's driven that is, one, we were drilling at PICACHO, and it was our first ever program there, a modest program, but we hit mineralization and discovered a new zone with 3 key drill holes there. But really with that new discovery, we did see significant uplift in the share price. That did trade off, but what's interesting is that if you look at the GDXJ, it did the exact same thing. And then we led into what's been our key focus right now, which is the bulk sample at PILAR. And we started with the channel sample results at surface, and been leading up to, you know, great indications with recovery, and with yesterday's news of showing that what the average grade is looking like, which is beyond our expectations. It's extremely positive. We have been moving back up in this upward trend. And again, if you look at gold performance and the GDXJ, it's doing the exact same thing. So for us to be mirroring what companies that are currently 10 times more the size of us in terms of market cap. For us to be reflecting that is extremely positive, and I think that really bodes well for the year to come as we continue to advance both these projects. The other thing to note before I change slides is that, you know, we were drilling quite actively while the market was going through, you know, a tough downturn in the gold space. And what was frustrating is that we were putting out some of the best results ever at PILAR, and we were trading sideways and then down. We were actively drilling during this period and doing significant step outs, the biggest step outs we've ever done, 600 meters away from the main zone, hitting mineralization, and still not really seeing full appreciation for that. So I think this was just a challenging time that didn't really matter what you did. That sentiment was just fading. And but it's good to see that we recovered from that, and again that we're outperforming others in our sector. So just to highlight those drill results, you know, these were later in April we started to put these out, and then in May, this last one here, this was the first core drill program ever completed successfully at PILAR. And this is what's really highlighted that potential, is that we're seeing even better grades in those core samples, significant widths, good grade, you know, well above the average that's mined, with 1.2 grams per ton gold. But just excellent indicators there's something of significance at PILAR that's right at surface worth going after. At PICACHO, you know, again, we just drilled 1,000 meters close to surface at one target area. We have several there that we want to focus on in the future. But the first target area, we hit mineralization over about a 250 meter strike. The most significant hole was actually a 100 meter step out from the historic workings in the area. So, you know, the most aggressive step out returned the best result. That's a great indicator for us. And we see a lot of potential upside here. And there's definitely a high grade component. So we think there's a nugget component here where we really have to look at drill density and how big of a drill diameter to use to try to maximize the potential and make sure we're getting the most accurate result out of that. But a lot of really positives coming from PICACHO. And really what this has done is proven our model. And I'll go through this in a bit more detail, but it's proving that there's something there of significance. And now we want to step out even further and test this at depth and see what that true potential is. And then you know, to kind of recap this last year in review, it's really the bulk sample has been a big driver for us. It's, you know we have something of significance at PILAR, but the key question is, can you recover those metals? And what we're seeing so far in the data that we've put out is that, yes, it looks very likely that you can recover both gold and silver at a high percentage. And, you know, the results we put out yesterday, you know, this is sampling done throughout the entire crushing of all the bulk sample material that we use. There's 800 tons that we're using in the heap leach pile. So that's actually 800 tons of material that's been crushed. That is the right size. So this is over 3/8 of an inch in size. And we've been sampling that off the conveyor belt at regular intervals through that entire crushing period. And those samples are averaging 1.9 grams per ton gold, 13 grams per ton silver. And what's significant there is that, you know, past work has kind of shown that at surface we were seeing, you know, 20 meters through old trenches of 0.7 grams per ton gold. We knew that there was higher grade associated in that, but that was kind of our expectation. If we could come with something that was around 0.7 grams per ton on average, you know, we'd be happy with that. And the fact that we're seeing 1.9 is quite significant, and also a significant boost in the silver values as well. We've got LTM, a certified, ISO certified group out of Hermosillo that's run by an engineer who was one of the lead technicians at SGS for metallurgical work, specifically on heap leach processing, with Rodrigo Carrero there. And he knows how to operate with these types of systems. So they're doing a lot of test work for us. And what's really encouraging is we did a leach study on 5 samples, 4 from surface from these trenches, 1 from core at depth from 125 meter downhole depth. And really what we were looking to see there was, our expectation was the 4 from surface would have good recovery using heap leach. The sample from depth in the core, our expectation was that it would be a little bit less recovery there, but something that we would then have to look to process a different way because of an increased sulfide component. However, we were surprised by the fact that all 5 samples returned very similar results. And the reason for that is both the gold and silver are not tied to anything. They're not associated purely with quartz mineralization. They're not tied to the sulfides. They're free for the large part. Over 90% of it is free gold and silver. And that gives us flexibility. It means that you don't necessarily have to heap leach to recover the majority of these metals. You can use other methods like gravity to recover. And that was a huge indication for us that we have flexibility and we have optionality when we look to how do we actually process the material here. So that changed our outlook on how we actually wanted to move forward with the bulk sample. Originally, we thought, okay, we'll take 1,000 tons, we'll run it through heap leach and see what we get. But we were able to collect about 1,400 tons and said, okay, let's use 800 tons to do the heap leach, and then about 600 tons to do different gravity tests to then do a comparison and see, okay, what makes the most sense in terms of the economics behind what it takes to heap leach versus the gravity component, and then we can decide how we move forward from there. So all very positive, and again, all being overseen by an independent group of qualified professionals. They're overlooking every step of the way, and we're doing double checks with them and also the other local labs like ALS and SGS to ensure that everything that we're building on here checks out, that it has been validated. So we've got a lot of confidence in that data moving forward. But again, everything is looking extremely encouraging to date. So with that, I'll jump into the kind of regular flow of the presentation here. For those that might not be as familiar with Mexico, I think it's really key to highlight how important mining is to Mexico. Right now, it sees the most investment out of any other Latin American speaking country. $600 million US goes into it annually for exploration. That's surpassed Chile recently, which is very impressive. I mentioned before, a quarter of all silver has been produced from Mexico. Mexico is number 7 in gold production. And really, when you look at Sonora State specifically, I think a lot of people group Mexico itself as a tier 2 jurisdiction, but I think Sonora is a tier 1. And really, the reasoning for that is that it produces the most gold out of any other state in Mexico and the most copper. It has established open pit mine developments all across the state. Mining is a huge part of the industry there. The people there understand it. They accept it. They know it, that it provides benefits to them. The infrastructure is incredible. We can drive to both of our projects within 2.5 hours from the city. That's extremely rare. It means we can mobilize our equipment quickly. It reduces our costs. Hermosillo, the capital, has everything we need in terms of personnel, equipment, the labs that we use for processing the samples. And I think important to note that the lab's performance are incredibly quick. If you look at other jurisdictions, like here in Canada, that have seen a slowdown, primarily due to the prep facilities located in Vancouver and in Ontario. They haven't fully recovered from that drop in production around COVID and when there was an increase in exploration. But that's not the case in Hermosillo. We drop off samples within 3 days. They're prepped, and on a plane being flown to North Vancouver for analysis. And we're seeing very quick turnaround right now, between 3 to 4 weeks. That's incredible. That's, you know, and it's extremely valuable to us. It means we can move quickly as we go. And again, it just all stems around Sonora being a quality jurisdiction, a place that's mine friendly, open to development, and has the people there to move it forward. Both our projects there, we have 100% interest in, that we can own 100% of both of the projects. We have a proven technical team, and I can say that with confidence just based off our track record over the last 3 years. We've drilled on both the projects, we've hit mineralization, and you know, we have a lot of confidence going forward we can continue to do that. So looking at the projects themselves, so here's a map of Sonora. Here's Hermosillo, the black dot in the middle here. Again, we can drive to both our projects. They're right off paved highways, and then 20 minutes on gravel. Pilar is surrounded by producing mines, and like at San Antonio, run by Osisco, a project that's moving towards development. This is just 25 kilometers north of us. Santana went into production about a year ago with Minera Alamos. That's only 50 kilometers to the east of us, and we see a lot of similarities between Pilar and what they're doing at Santana. La Colorada, established open pit run by Argonaut Gold. They've been there since 2011. The mine's been there for a very long time, for decades. So we're in a good place that's surrounded by producing assets, or assets that are very close to production. And we think there's a lot of potential still in this area that's, I think, really around Pilar has been overlooked. And that's where we're doing our bulk sample. We've been drilling there for the last 3 years, and now let's show the metallurgy works. Looking to the north at PICACHO, this is in a different gold belt in the northern part of Sonora, called the Caborca. And really the significance here is that there's huge multi-million ounce deposits. You have La Herradura that's got 15 million ounces of gold in the deposit itself and the satellite deposits around it. So a huge deposit run by Fresnillo. Right next to PICACHO is San Francisco mine, which has been on and off for production for the last couple decades, but has 3 million ounces of gold contained. They've mined about 1 million ounces of that so far. And we do see a lot of similarities with the host rock there and what we see at PICACHO. Looks very similar to what San Francisco was pre-discovery. It's just 18 kilometers away. So again, within an established gold belt, it's a big area with PICACHO, 24 square kilometers. And again, extremely accessible, right off a 4-lane highway that connects Hermosillo to Tucson. So, and both the areas, I think important to note, are on ranch land primarily, which is means we've got good local land ownership that have allowed us to access, and again, very open and friendly towards mine development. So looking at Pilar, just kind of again in summary, this is a list of some of the drill results that we've had over the last few years. And again, just seeing nice, consistent, wide intervals of good grade across what we call our main zone primarily, and really was the key focus point for us at the start. And what we quickly discovered is that it looks like the mineralized system there outcrops at surface, but is dipping towards the northeast. And once we kind of keyed in on that, we had drilled a few holes towards the northeast that hit mineralization, but really the most significant mineralization was coming across that system, drilling towards the southwest. And once we keyed in on that, we just started to implement that across all our drill campaigns. And that's really, I think, what's allowed us to be successful, is opening up new areas for targeting. And we were able to hit new zones and discover new mineralization along the strike of the main zone. So stepping out 125 meters along this and hitting 108 meters of 0.8 grams per ton gold on the system there. And then what's really significant is then we're starting to see these parallel zones to that main zone that are really just starting to be uncovered now. And if you look at it overall, we've got about a 600 meter by 600 meter area where we see these parallel zones contained within it. And really, beyond the main zone, 4T trend has seen very little for drilling, really just a first pass with some historic stuff concentrated in one area down here. We did step out in this direction to hit mineralization there. So we know there's another trend there. We've hit mineralization in between the two and started to develop that. And it looks like everything along this 1.2 kilometer trend is still very prospective. We have great indications on surface that there's mineralization there. There's even old historic adits and shafts that are quite big that have returned very good grades for gold and silver that have not been properly drill targeted yet. So really over half the property has not been drill tested, and that's the potential that still remains at Pilar. But again, what we have at the main zone and what we're seeing at indications at a 4T trend is that there's something of substance there that we can start to move towards development. And really that led us towards the decision to do the bulk sample. And initially we thought of doing 1,000 tons. We were able to get a bit more material, so we got 1,400 tons of material. That's all been trucked over to a private site that's about 25 kilometers away from Pilar. They had all the equipment, the facility to process the bulk sample in multiple ways, not just with the heap leach, but also testing gravity and testing dynamic cells, which are essentially is a leaching process in a tank where you're agitating it. So it gave us a lot of flexibility there and very close to us. And all of that equipment was not being used at present. So we're able to utilize that. We started with channel sampling at surface to define where we wanted to take the sample. And really important to note that we wanted to focus on not just the high grade portions, but what would be representative of the whole. So, we sampled in different areas and we kind of used that. We used 5 of these key areas to then blend the material, bring it all together, homogenize it, crush it, so that we've got something that's representative of the bigger picture here, not just focusing on the high grade components. And that channel sampling on average was returning about 1.4 grams per ton gold, 11 grams per ton silver. And like we put out yesterday in the news, we're actually seeing an increase in that. So to me, that's telling me that high grade component, that the higher grade mineralization that you see along fault structures at Pilar really start to upgrade things when you look at it as a bulk target. And I think we'll see that continue as we go. If Pilar ends up being an even bigger target for us, we obviously then you would expect other dilution that would drop that grade. But with what we're seeing at surface exposure right now, that's represented in the bulk sample, we're seeing fantastic grade for gold and silver, which just means it's got a stronger chance of going forward. That leach study that we did initially with LTM, really what we wanted to accomplish here was to show what is hosting the gold and silver. Is it on its own? Is it tied to different minerals? Because the more complex that becomes, that means typically higher costs to figure out how to actually recover it. And to our benefit, what we're seeing is that a significant portion of the gold and silver, between 95 and 99% of the gold and 73 to 97% of the silver can be recovered with gravity in an agitated leach, which is very high. It's extremely high for this jurisdiction, especially on the silver component. And just gives us a lot of confidence that, look, the mineralogy is not that complicated. The gold's there, the silver's there. It's not directly tied to minerals that are going to be overly complicated to get those metals out. And again, it's just going to improve the economics as we move forward. So really encouraging to have those results as we move forward there. Okay, then I want to quickly jump over to PICACHO, and I'll summarize kind of everything at the end here. But I think it's important to go over PICACHO because of the potential that's there. And this map, I think, really highlights. You've got a 4-lane highway just off the project, extremely accessible. We can drive across these flats. That's all ranch owned, primarily by the same owner that owns the mining titles for PICACHO, which is significant. Obviously, having them on site gives us free access to the area. The San Francisco mine, again, established. It just went offline for production by Magna Gold, but I think it'll just a matter of time before it goes back online again. Again, there's still 2 million ounces in the ground there, so I'm sure they'll find a way to get that out. But really, what's significant is that pre-discovery of San Francisco, what existed on the ground there were old artisanal workings. These are old shafts at surface that were going along high-grade mineralization. And it was Fresnillo that actually discovered San Francisco. And really all they did was start drilling around these old workings until they hit significant mineralization. And when they did, they were able to define 400,000 ounces of 2 grams per ton gold. And this is the late 80s. So the price of gold wasn't really in a place where that was enough for them. So they ended up selling the asset. But Fresnillo actually kept quite a bit of ground in the area. And then over time, that developed into what we know as the San Francisco mine today, which is now about 0.4 grams per ton gold on average. But again, upwards of 3 million ounces total gold contained. And so what's significant there is that at PICACHO, we have over a 6-kilometer trends across the property, these old historic workings that were going along high-grade mineralization, gold and silver. These are significant shafts that have gone along shear zones. And in some places, like at our San Ramon, underground drives that went 90 meters underground, so quite significant, where they're actually mining the gold. And good indications that the gold was primarily free, or at least in a place where they could recover most of it freely, because you see old mills around the area where they're grinding the stone. And so that was really our initial approach was, okay, we know we've got these old workings. Let's look at the geology. We got a bit of geophysics to help us, some surface geochemistry. Let's start drill targeting, and starting with San Ramon. And so we drilled there for the first time December, and we hit mineralization with our discovery hole, which we're calling it 44 meters of 0.6, but really tied together in a nice zone that's just over 12 meters of 2 grams per ton gold. This is all very close to surface, and with a little bit of silver with it, it gives a nice boost. But this is just one area. This is San Ramon here, this tiny isolated area here. We've got about 500 meters of trend. We've tested about half of that so far, but again, we've hit mineralization. Now we have all these other targets to start to follow up on. And as we go through that, we think there's big potential to find a more significant system as we go. And also important to note that Fresnillo does still hold and control the land to the east of us and this inset within the property here. So we have good neighbors here as we look to continue to develop and move PILAR or PICACHO forward. This is looking at our model, and why we're really excited about PICACHO is, we drilled again near surface, hit significant oxide alteration, mineralization through this zone here. And this is all tying into our overall model, which we had before, which is showing that we have these shear zones that are splaying off a big regional fault. And as we go at depth, we think we're seeing windows of what that potential is at surface. And really what we need to start targeting is this bigger system at depth. And there's quite a significant area here to really come up with something that can have that multi-million ounce potential. And that's why we're excited about it. And we're not just seeing the mineralization in these typical host rocks that you see San Francisco in, but also in the rocks below that as well, in the sediment. So there's a lot of potential here. It's really, we're just scratching the surface at PICACHO, and we think there's a lot of upside. And just to give you a sense of scale, this is the current outline of the San Francisco pit that goes 350 meters deep. It's over 1.2 kilometers long. And, so we really do feel that there's potential for size here as we continue to explore at PICACHO. So looking ahead for us, obviously the bulk samples, the key piece. We'll be continuing to put out results as we get them. The leaching process is ongoing right now, and we should have some data that we can present over the short term to showcase the potential and what we're seeing for recovery there. And again, then leading towards further gravity studies to use as a comparison to what we're seeing from the heap leach. Because we have that free gold and silver. We'll be going back and drilling infill, more step out drilling at Pilar. We think there's obviously still a lot of potential there. And that's going to lead us towards a maiden resource estimate to let us know in the market, really signify what we see there as the potential, and also permitting towards development. We're going to be putting together our application to file that permit this year, and that's going to allow us to actually move Pilar towards development. Right now, it's taking just over a year to get that permit back once you submit the application. And again, looking at other jurisdictions, to wait a year to get a mine development permit is incredibly fast, and that's really one of the key benefits to Mexico is the permitting component. Even though I think Mexico's probably been thrown a little bit of shade recently with comments made by the current president on mining reform, but it looks like all of that noise is going to get wiped out by the Mexican Supreme Court, and things will remain stable and very pro-mining. And even if they were to implement changes that they are proposing, our team has reviewed it, and we don't see it having any material impact on our progress. And companies like Fresnillo have actually put out news releases saying the same thing. So, we're very confident in Mexico. We think if you look at it as a comparable to other jurisdictions, it is extremely open to mining. I talked to individuals here in Canada and the US that have been waiting years for drill permits, for mining development permits. Again, you need to be in a jurisdiction you can move quickly in, and we feel that Mexico and Sonora allows us to do that. And then at PICACHO, we've got a big area to explore. Again, we're just scratching the surface there. We'll be continuing to do drill programs intermittently when the timing's right, and to move those along. And we are currently permitted for up to 15 kilometers of drilling there and 2 kilometers of trenching. So it's really up to us on how quickly we want to advance things there. But obviously the focus right now being the bulk sample and getting things moving at Pilar. So really to summarize things, on the right we've got 2 charts. These are from about a month ago, so obviously things have changed a little bit, but really what's important, what we want to highlight, is that when we started Tocvan, we really caught that upward momentum in the price of gold in 2021. And since that time, gold's pretty much traded flat and a little bit up. And so overall gold's been in a positive space. However, most of the companies that are exploring and developing haven't been. But what's nice to see is that recently, again, over the kind of year to date, we are seeing a stronger correlation with how we're trading and the price of gold. And we see that trend continuing. So we think there's, if investors are bullish on gold and silver, we think we have a strong case of why we have the potential to move with it. We're in a quality jurisdiction. There's no doubt that Mexico, Sonora, is built for mining, and very, very much a big part of it there. We have local expertise. We've built our entire team down there. It gives us a lot of confidence, not only in the permitting space, but also in exploration and development. We have a path towards production with Pilar that's becoming more and more real as we see these results from the bulk sample. We have potential for discovery, both at Pilar and at PICACHO, in a big way. And we think that gives our shareholders even added upside as we continue. We are well funded. We have secured funding to keep us going for the next year. But beyond that, we think we're in a good space to add to that, especially when the timing's right, where we can really start to see our share price appreciate. And we're well structured. That's been a key focus for us for the start, and that really just, again, gives our shareholders added upside. And we do feel strongly that the precious metals are breaking out. They have been, and we see that trend continuing. And I think the other component here is that where we're operating, the costs to develop these types of projects are extremely low, and that gives us a bit of flexibility as well. So if you look at recent analogs, companies that have taken projects towards development, started producing off of them, the costs have been around $15 million Canadian. And if you look at that in comparison to other jurisdictions, there's really few places you can do that for that low of cost. And, as an example, before Tocvan, I was working in Alaska. I would spend $15 million in 3 months exploring. For $15 million, I can develop a mine in Mexico. To me, that's absolutely incredible. And that's really part of what we're trying to build here is, be in a jurisdiction that allows that to happen at extremely low cost. The other component is that, your all-in sustaining costs on the high end for this jurisdiction, you're looking at about $1,000 an ounce. At $2,000 gold, you're making $1,000 an ounce. So, these deposits that are at surface, they're accessible, they're low cost to produce off of, become extremely attractive. And if gold goes up, that improves. But even if gold goes down, if it bounces around in the 1900s here, 1800s, that's okay. You're still making profit. So really, we think we're in a good place, a good jurisdiction that allows us to really navigate through this market. But as gold really shows that strength, we think we can really benefit from that as well. So with that, thank you for your time. I'll open it up for any questions there might be, and please keep in contact. We've got a lot of news flow that we expect over the short term. Obviously, we're really excited about the future here and what we're moving towards at PILAR and PICACHO. And again, just thank you for the time. We look forward to keeping everyone updated.